What is going on, everyone? Welcome to yet another episode of the Schoch Factor Podcast. Yeah, I said yet another episode of the Schoch Factor Podcast, even though it's the first one of the season. But I'm getting ahead of it. I am stepping out. I'm putting out the notes app before the news can get to it, before Jordan can say, "Why'd you say yet another?" as we did in 2023. But we are back, baby. The boys are back in town. One of college baseball's favorite songs to play. We are joined here on the Schoch Factor Podcast. Of course, I am your host, Stephen Schoch. That is the beautiful Jordan Shusterman, and that is Jake Mintz, who's also beautiful. I wanted him to be on the edge of his seat, though. I didn't want to lead with the compliment. I wanted to see the reflexes, the reactions. I took a psychology class my freshman year, and you guys have to deal with the gen ed requirements and the consequences of me thinking I'm a psychologist. But fellas, as we veer towards the 2024 season, how are we doing?
An unbelievable introduction, Stephen Schoch. As chaotic as ever, I see that the offseason did not put you on a different path. You have continued down your journey of being the one and only biggest donkey. Jake Mintz, I am doing well. Got a haircut yesterday. I look a little bit like a cartoon character. I had a friend describe me. They said, "You look whiter." Okay. Which was,
Which is, by the way, a good transition to the fact that, we're recording this on video here. We're going to have the Schoch Factor pod here. You're going to see our faces. And so if you've listened, by the way, I'm Jordan. If this is your first time listening to the Schoch Factor with me, Steve, and Jake, you will now know what we all look like and how much you will now understand our either confusion or delight when Steve is either going on a random tangent or talking about a player that doesn't exist or anything. But now also you can see Jake's new haircut and Steve and I's hats. So very exciting stuff. I'm excited to be back, Steve.
I'm so excited to be back, Jordan. This is joy. This is the epitome of joy. And the college baseball season is only a week away. Steve, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. This was one of the most tumultuous off seasons I've had in my life. And I've had off seasons where my training was working at State Farm. So, that doesn't come without a lot of weight,
Mm-hmm.
And, this off season up until about a week ago, we were nervous, of course, as a podcast because, the NCAA came down and they came down hard. Jake and Jordan are in the transfer portal a little bit right now with other careers and other endeavors they are going down in life. And we were a little bit worried. We were a little bit worried that the law was going to catch us, that Jake and Jordan were going to be silenced. Their First Amendment right, the freedom of speech, was going to be just absolutely infringed upon. I don't know the amendment order or the numbers. That seems right, though. But
just like you, Steve, our amateurism remains intact. Our eligibility is still alive, is forever, is eternal.
Steve proved that.
Steve proved that in his speech. And yes, we are back for yet another season of the Schoch Factor Baseball Podcast. I'm Jake Mintz. That's Jordan Shusterman. Steve, do you want to get into it?
Yeah, well, let's get right into it. And I want to start off with, first of all, with the Schoch Factor this season, Jake and Jordan, they're going to be here every week. Mike Rooney was here all off season. We thank him for his service. We love Mike Rooney. Getting to talk to Mike Rooney once a week, that was a gift. I don't know if I could even call it doing work because it wasn't. It was going out and having fun. And that's going to continue. Mike Rooney will still be joining us for an episode a week this spring because it's not fall anymore.
No more fall ball, Steve.
I got so used to Mike Rooney. He was my pumpkin spice latte. I associated him with the fall very heavily. Now he's my all year drink, the everyday driver. You can't beat it. It's a very good thing we got going on here at the Schoch Factor Podcast. And this one I'm excited for because I've missed you guys. I've missed you guys very much. So let's just go right into it. You want to get into the top 10 storylines of this offseason?
Yeah. So Steve, before we're going to do, a couple season preview episodes going into opening day. We are recording this on Friday, a week before this season will begin. And Steve, not to make you jealous, but I believe I will be hanging out with Mike Rooney IRL during opening weekend in Arizona. So again, try not to get too jealous, but I am glad that Rooney will continue to appear on this show, but it is called the Schoch Factor for a reason. It is about Steve and Steve's love for the game, and we are just lucky to be a part of it. But for our season preview, we did want to just keep it simple, 10 storylines we are looking forward to for one reason or another. And so we have our list of 10, 9 of which I totally understand, the 10th of which Steve is going to have to explain to us, and I can't wait. But that's what we are going to do today on this first episode of the season. And I think there's an obvious place to start, Steve, and that's at the top. Go Tigers, as they say. The defending champion LSU Tigers are going to be pretty good again. I think we feel pretty good about that. But how good in particular? Because last year, they were essentially an all-star team, most notably headlined by the 2 top picks in the draft, Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz. They've moved on to professional endeavors. Shame on them. Why didn't they stay in Baton Rouge? That looked like so much fun. The answer is millions of dollars. But Steve, LSU, when I say LSU this year, of course, there's still some familiar faces like Tommy Tanks. But the question is, can they defend their crown or be in the mix to defend their crown with a slightly less famous baseball team? When I say LSU, what are you thinking?
Well, I immediately think about the fact that if I'm Paul Skeens, I'm probably coming back. I'm probably going to want to run it back, do it all again, play college baseball with my friends. I get why he goes. But I think with LSU, there's a lot of reason to be excited because they returned a ton of talent. They have Ethan Frey, who Coach Johnson told us last season at Round Rock next year in 2024, he's going to be the Golden Spikes winner. He also told us he was going to win the College World, or he had a good feeling they could win the College World Series. They did that. So now I believe the credibility is there. So I think he's someone to watch. But I think with them, they're going to have a ton of new talent on the mound. That is going to be a lot of fun to watch emerge. I think this is the year Christian Little is also going to really be who everyone's expected him to be as a college baseball player. And so I just think there's a ton of reason for excitement around LSU, but also a ton of legitimate reason to believe they could be really good again this season.
I think the question that no one's asking about LSU is Jay Johnson on the hot seat, because it's February 9th. They've yet to win a game. Mm-hmm. And
we know in Baton Rouge, I mean, the standards,
it's a demanding fan base. Mm-hmm. And Jay Johnson's not even from there. So is it time to worry? Is it time to worry? The answer to that is actually going to be no. And that's because they won the national championship this year. Now, the thing with a team like LSU, right? So they lose Cruz and they lose Skeens, like the 2 most famous college baseball players last year. Probably the 2 best college baseball players last year. But for a program like LSU, there's so much talent behind them that we didn't really get to see. And so I'm excited about like Jared Jones. Remember seeing him in person? Yeah. It was like, why are you not a tight end in the NFL right now? That's one. Paxton Kling, long hair, don't care. Mm-hmm. Excited to see if he can get some more playing time.
Wonder if he got a haircut.
Wonder if he got a haircut. Doubt it. And then the freshman on that team I'm excited about is Cam Johnson, who turned down quite a bit of coin to go be a Tiger. I would imagine that he's still receiving some coin to be a Tiger. He throws like 97 with his left hand. Quick Cam Johnson story. A kid I coach up here in New York faced Cam Johnson at a showcase and came back and was like, I need to get in the gym because he had his doors blown off by Cam Johnson. So yeah, I mean, LSU is going to be good. They are not going. Last year was generational. It was singular. It was unique. What Skeens and Cruz did will maybe never be replicated on one team together. So those expectations can't be that high, but they're still hot. Like, it's still LSU.
Yeah, and I would just say quickly before I kick it back to you, Steve, I'm glad you mentioned the pitching, because I do think that last year, I mean, they were just bludgeoning teams, right? And the pitching sort of showed up at the end. Of course, they had Skeens, and we had some big, Riley Cooper showing up at the end of the season. They had some big bullpen performances. This year, with guys like Luke Holman, Gage Jump, now we have some big-time arms that are coming, and I think that herd's going to be even better. They have guys like Cam Johnson, freshman on the mound, that could be impacting them. So maybe it is a little bit more of a balanced team. And Tommy White's still there, which is freaking awesome. You mentioned Ethan Fry and Jared Jones, both of those guys. I mean, I still wonder where Ethan Fry is going to get his at-bats, but I am excited to see, when he plays. And then, guys, how have we talked this long about LSU without mentioning our man Hayden Travinski? Talk about an LSU through and through. They've brought in all of these all of these all-stars from the transfer portal from different parts of the country, and they're recruiting from all over the place. But this team still has some Louisiana soul.
Louisiana soul.
And Hayden Travinski is absolutely that. And by the way, it's not like he's just some grit and grind, bench guy. The dude slugged like 700
and
year.
Is he still on his parents' health care? Can he can rent a car with no extra fees, I believe.
He sure looks that old. But we love Hayden, and I'm excited to see him get another season of ABs. So yeah, LSU. I mean, again, they're going to be compelling no matter what, even if they're slightly less famous. So, any last thoughts on LSU, Steve, before we move to our second topic?
I just love the note, the scouting report of, okay, coach, I'm going to face Cam Johnson this weekend. Come home. I need to be better. That guy is so good. He got me so good, made me look so bad that I am inspired that I need to be better. Of course, we got to mention Maryland product. We always love seeing guys from Maryland have success. A fellow Washington Catholic or Christian Athletic Conference former player, former alumni. The few differences between me and Cam Johnson, though, if you look closely, he throws 97 from the left side. I threw 87 with a lot of sink, not when I was in high school like he did. But you mentioned so many talented players with LSU, and then you have the core of veterans too, like Alex Milazzo and Nate Ackenhausen, who's going to do it on the mound for him. So, I mean, there's just like so many different guys to be excited about. They are so deep as a team.
Yeah, and let's remember the last time we saw Alex Milazzo, what was happening? Do you remember, Steve?
Yeah, broken fibula.
But he was being carried by Paul Skeens to the championship dog pile. But now I believe he's healthy and will be catching for them. So yeah.
Now speaking of Skeens and Cruz, they weren't just important to LSU last season; they were important to the sport as a whole. Cruz and Skeens and LSU crossed over into the larger baseball consciousness and became a real storyline of the sports season with how dominant they were. So our second topic, the superstar void. Can anybody cross over enough to become a big deal in American society? Besides Steve.
Steve does that every time he hits post.
Here's the way to think about it. Can anyone go to the ESPYs?
That's a
good thought. My junior year of college, our basketball team went to the ESPYs actually. That's random.
The closest Steve got to the ESPYs.
Yeah, that's as close as I ever got. It felt very weird. They didn't win. Felt like a lot of money spent on a plane ticket.
Steve, who you got? Who's your pick for who's going to be famous?
Travis Bazzana is going to be mega star famous because everybody's going to love him. He's the type of baseball player where if you're a guy, you watch him and it's like, wow, that's cool. And, you hear him talk, you watch him just like a human being. And it's like, wow, that guy's super cool. Like,
agreed.
He's got super cool stuff. Everything he does is elevated. My opinion of Australian people is significantly better because of what Travis Bazzana puts out there as a human being. And then you mix in the fact that he's hitting like 370 last season. It's like, okay, this guy is superstar potential written all over him. And he knows it. He has that confidence with him, but he's also very humble about it. So he's definitely a guy I think he's going to take the world by storm.
Humble doesn't do crossover superstardom. I think, okay, so Travis,
the opposite of that.
Yeah, Travis Bazzana is 21. That's important for what I'm about to say. Do you guys know what a shoey is?
Yes, I know.
I don't think
familiar with the shoey.
You're familiar with the shoey? So I believe it did start in Australia. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think it is an Australian thing. It's where you pour an entire beer into a shoe, and then you drink it from the shoe. I think if we want Bazzana to really cross over into the national market, he needs to lean into his Aussiedom. And he needs to crack open a Foster's. Like, be a stereotype. Pour it into a shoe. Into an Ugg. No, into an Ugg. Hit a bomb, drop a bomb, pour a Foster's into an Ugg, and that's how we go to the next level. I think, Steve, I love Travis Bazzana. I think the two guys I would pick to like really be a big fucking deal this year are Jack Caglione, because he does both, and Brody Brecht, because he throws 101 miles an hour. Thoughts on that, Jordan?
That's fair.
Yeah, so right, because with Bazana, like I do think that the Australian part will help him, but like you're like, oh, he can hit 370. That's nice. That the average sports fan does not care about that. If he's hitting 500, which I suppose is like within the realm of possibility, like I think for him and JJ Welderholt, amazing baseball players, but they're going to have to be either have some hit streak that lasts the whole season. Like that's the only way they're going to crack through on a statistical level. Whereas to Jake's point, I think what Caglione is capable of two-way, and especially if the talent on the mound gets ironed out the way we've heard it maybe has this fall, that's what we want to see as casual. Again, it's the reason why a big reason why Ohtani broke through at a major league level. Like, even if you know vaguely, like, yeah, okay, two-way players have existed in college. Caglione, because of the physical potential to both lead the country in home runs and then throw the ball 100 miles an hour from left, like that is going to make people want to tune in and watch. Same thing with Brody Brecht. Like he's just throwing pitches that you can't even necessarily see at the major league level. And so while I think being at Iowa is not necessarily going to help that, hey, Caitlin Clark's a pretty big freaking deal. So I have to imagine that there's a way to, get the Hawkeye brand out there.
Jordan's like, yeah, it must be. It's so hard to be a famous collegiate at the University of Iowa. Jordan, may I direct you to the most famous college athlete in America?
And let me tell you, man, so I don't know if Brody Brecht will necessarily be selling out road games the way that Caitlin Clark is. Scaling out scout sections, but it's not quite.
Can you imagine, dude?
I still think, yeah. I mean, to me, it's Cags and everybody else, but I am excited to see if Brody Brecht is throwing strikes. Oh my god!
Iowa rolls into East Lansing, just selling out the game against Michigan State.
Right. I don't know. I'm gonna look at the Iowa road schedule and see where they're gonna really pack the house.
What you got, Steve?
Yeah, I think another guy to kind of consider up there in the discussion with Brody Brecht is going to be Hagen Smith out of Arkansas, because.
And Chase Bird.
Same thing, just kind of comes from the left side.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's true. It's a different look. And unfortunately, like the SEC is going to have the advantage in terms of the view, watchability and just the general view count and likelihood that it will get retweeted more times. But there are definitely some other pitchers that could jump through. But to me, it's Caglione and everybody else.
Also, like Brecht could just throw a pitch 104.
Yeah,
right.
That's
and like that's that's enough. Like that's really hard. And then if he hits 104, it's like, can he break Chapman's record if he like works out a little bit more?
I mean, like, please be careful, Brody Brecht. But yes, I would also like to see that.
Jake, I have a question for you on that. So when I talked to him and I asked him about throwing 104, he said, well, on TrackMan, it was actually just 102.7. If you were in his shoes, where on the gun it says 104 on the broadcast, TrackMan says 102.7, would you just go, no, that's 104? No. Or would you go by the TrackMan?
You go by the TrackMan.
I've always gone higher number is the writer number.
Well, I think that's because you threw 83, Steve, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But
speaking about picking up the pace,
let's do that.
This podcast. Next topic. One of the biggest fights or disagreements we got into last year, Steve, was how far and how hard baseballs were traveling. It felt like
very related to what we were just talking about.
Very related.
Oh, I want to know how far that actually went?
Yes. Every 10 seconds, it felt like there was another guy we'd never heard of hitting a ball 117. And Steve's job as the amplifier of college baseball was to let everyone know about that. Meanwhile, Jordan and I, the professional baseball journalist guys, were like, Steve, that's not right. Like, that doesn't make sense. Giancarlo Stanton does this like 4 times a year.
Or it is right. And that means that the balls and or the bats are juiced like crazy.
Correct.
It's possible that the balls were coming off the bat at 117, but we're just here to say that's not normal. So, so not that it's bad, Steve. And again, this is where I'm going to kick it to you. But my question, and this is our number 3 storyline, is like, what is the what is the environment this year in terms of exit
It's getting
velocity
hotter.
and homers and whatever. And the weather relates to that too. So, Steve, what do you think?
Look, technology is only getting better.
Hell yeah, dude.
That's the thing about technology. That's the cool thing about it. And speaking of technology and baseball bats getting better, have you guys heard of the Soldier Tank BB Core baseball bat by Soldier Sports?
Look at Steve. What a freaking professional.
Tell me about
This isn't just any bat. It's lighter and hotter than any of its predecessors. And this is thanks to its infused power alloy technology that creates an ultra big, ultra hot sweet spot. Crafted from over 2.5 years of research and development, the Soldier Tank is the perfect blend of speed and power, designed for both power and contact hitters. Jake, Jordan, you guys like math? Here's math for you. Speed times mass times impact equals extreme power. I've seen it swung. Even the miss hits have juice with the Soldier Tank. The bat is priced at an incredible $311, which is well worth it to swing the top scoring BB Core bat ever. They're selling fast, though, so head over to soldiersports.us to secure yours today.
Wow. If I got one of these to hit fungos to my 9-year-olds, I might send some of them to the hospital.
Wouldn't be safe.
That's not what it was recommending for why you want a Soldier Tank. So that's a hell of a name for a bat.
I got to say, Steve, you've sold me. Like,
okay, well, that's
good.
If I'm a coach, in the Big South, and I'm like, we need these bats.
We need these
right now.
You know who needs them? The Big West.
You were just missing out on home runs. If you
get a few more home runs over there on the West Coast,
please ship a few out. Might as well. But the home runs, they're up, and I think a big reason for it, technology is getting better. That's a big piece of it. But the reason they're happening so frequently, it's just the pitch clock. Everybody's sped up, which in turn leads to pitchers throwing worse pitches because they're rushed. And hitters, they have to swing faster because now they're on the clock, So I think the faster swings to get the swing in before the pitch clock violation.
Incredible. Incredible take.
1. Psychology comes in. 3, 2, 1. Gotta go fast.
No, Bat's gotta go through the zone faster.
Steve's take is pitch clock equals increase in bat speed. Oh, that's so good.
Oh man. I will say, now, Steve, can I just say, I'm glad you mentioned the pitch clock because, again, we got it last year, and it is definitely still relevant. And I am curious. I would push back and say, players will be more used to it now, and so pitchers will not have as many crappy pitches thrown because of the pitch clock because they're more used to it and all those things, whatever. But, it's all related. And I do think as much as we can speculate and, put our conspiracy hats on and say, oh, my God, the bats are juiced, the balls are juiced, whatever. I think you're right. And not just because of that compelling ad read. Yeah, the bats are probably more technologically perfectly designed to hit home runs. So, that's fine.
Okay. When people really loved baseball the most was when the balls were going over the fence at a record rate in the late 90s. And so if this is I'm fine with this being the environment as long as, we know this is the environment. That's it, right?
Yeah.
It's not like global warming. We're not going to die because balls are going over the fence. My great-grandkids aren't going to not see a polar bear because, the ball's going off at 119 miles an hour.
Well, I don't think my great-grandkids are seeing a polar bear because, the consequences of seeing a polar bear. They only eat meat, Jake. They don't eat food. They don't eat plants. They're born killers. Polar bears are dangerous. If you see one, run away if you're listening. But speaking of confusion on the mound, speaking of, getting rushed a little bit, another reason home runs are going to be up is because pitchers are going to be very confused, especially in the CAA. And that's because our next storyline, what conference am I in? If I am at Elon and I am pitching, I'm like, okay, just another day pitching in the Coastal Athletic Association.
And then you just fall down and then throw it 78 miles an hour down the middle.
Hello, 85 right down the pipe. That ball's out of here. We got tons of schools moving, tons of conferences. The great news is, though, if you are into hey, what conference is this school? And just go to d1baseball.com, click teams. has the answer for you. They keep it updated. Kendall and the boys have been on it all off season long.
They keep it updated. It's incredible, as if it changes during the season.
It feels that way.
Might.
It could.
I do love that on like every other D1 baseball podcast, which includes ours during the season. Like, it's true on the website, it is accurate and you can trust it. But I love that whenever any of these teams comes up, there's like a pause, and Rooney's like, "Hold on, like 1 second, let me strap in here." Okay, FAU is in the American. I hope I'm right about that.
I wake up every morning and I ask, "Who am I?" Okay, Steve, you ever have a night out and you wake up the next morning and you say, "Where am I?" Okay,
yeah.
That's college baseball now.
How many teams are in the Big 12?
It is a carousel. It is a carousel. It is complicated. There will be a pop quiz next podcast, okay? So I would like both of you to prepare. We all know that I'm never going to remember it because that's not how my brain works. Okay, I have ADHD.
Firmly in Jordan's job.
So next episode, just prep. Okay, we got a lot of conference realignment.
Okay, so for this, Jake, I'm going to give you one little cheat sheet, one little study guide. There's one that you absolutely cannot forget, and it's Liberty moving into Conference USA. Because that just makes sense. It's like the LSU Tigers changing to the Tiger Exhibit Conference.
They need to add Life University and Pursuit of Happiness University so that they can really nail all three.
Life U. Yeah. The school of life,
life state,
life technical, life A&M.
Yeah, I don't know how you pull that one off.
Then we have the Colonial is now called the Coastal, which is a good time to mention that this week's episode is also sponsored by the Atlantic Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean has now sponsored an entire conference, another conference, the Atlantic Coast Conference. We know all about that. But the Coastal Conference, okay, the Coastal Collegiate Association, is that it?
The
Coastal Athletic Association.
I think it was Athletic Association.
Yeah. Thanks to the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, they're always supporting us.
It's just Nick at Night. It's
the winner, the better.
An off network.
Yeah. But again, like we got some teams in the American, new teams in Conference USA, and then the Big 12, right? This is the biggest change I think that we'll really have to get used to. Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU now officially Big 12 country now extends to Utah, to Central Florida, and then all the way up here to the Midwest here in Ohio. I'm excited to be living, I live sort of near Cincinnati. I'm in Big 12 country now.
It ain't the little 12, big dog, but it's not just the mid-majors that are changing, okay? No. Power 5, which in our sport is really the Power 4, is in its last year of life, and that is our next topic.
Yeah, our number 5 storyline is that this is it. This is the Power 5 will never be the same after 2024, and in 2025 things will get very different. So it's one thing.
I'm seeing here, one second,
Conference USA and whatever, but this is really when it's going to get wacky.
I'm seeing here, Steve, that something called the Packeronian 12 is not going to exist next year. What does that mean?
Yeah, so what that means, they're switching to Annie's, the Annie shell, the white cheddar. The Annie's white cheddar shell, mac and cheese. It's not going to be the Packeronian 12. I was really rooting for they got to a point where there were only 3 teams left this offseason. I was really rooting for the Pac Pie, where the Pac 3.14 institutions, where maybe they get a few California schools to play games against them too, to fill in that 0.14, whatever the rest of the number.
265 358 Yeah, I got you. Sorry, Steve. Was that too many numbers?
You're going to activate my sleeper cell if you keep firing those bad boys off. But yeah, no, just seeing the Pac-12 fizzle out and die was strange. Wasn't on my bingo card for 2023. But it's kind of something that's happening. And, while it was fun, it was a great run. The Pac-12 had a great time. Now, the rest of the schools that were in it are just going to essentially go on a tirade of making conferences change their names, I believe. I believe that's in
Oh,
order.
I don't know. Is that are we changing the names are we finally going to adjust the numbers to reflect the number of schools that are in these conferences?
No, never.
I hope
No,
the
that
Big
the
Ten
number
has 17 schools. It's still the Big Ten.
Number is fine by me, and I know I might ruffle our sponsors' feathers here, but the ACC, what are we talking about here? That's Stanford. They aren't on the Atlantic coast.
Whoa.
That is just a blatant lie. The Colonial Athletic Conference, they said, you know what? Williamsburg, that's pretty colonial. The 13 colonies, sure. But you know what? We're more so on the coast. Let's just go with the coast. That's honest. That's good, honest stuff.
Just to review, this year for the Power 5 is pretty much the same as last year, except for those changes to the Big 12 that we just talked about. Mm-hmm. Next year, Cal and Stanford are going to the ACC. Hilarious. Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC. Makes somewhat more sense. Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah will also be joining the Big 12. And then Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA will be going to the Big 10. Washington State, out in the cold. Oregon State, out in the cold.
Yeah, we're still waiting on those, right?
In our sport, Washington State, respectfully, is less relevant. Oregon State, their baseball program, as far as I understand, is one of their best sports at Oregon State. Yeah. And it appears that they're going to go independent for a number of years after this year. And so a storyline within this that I'm very interested in is Oregon State, with one of the largest chips on the shoulder ever, trying to win the Pac and Aronian 12 in its final year of existence after they were left out in the cold, right? So it's like, that's not a chip on the shoulder. That's a whole fucking potato.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And also, again, I think the funniest thing...
You can't fire me, I'm leaving!
When you think about this whole realignment and all this stuff, which is just, I mean, it's an obvious reality, but like baseball has nothing to do with this. All of this is driven by other sports. And so we're just kind of along for the ride in this absurd ride. And especially for a school like Oregon State, where baseball is, premier program, they are the school that is truly left in such a bizarre spot. So I agree with you, Jake. I think they are definitely the team that is most interesting in all of this. But thankfully, we can at least enjoy and appreciate relatively normal geographic conferences for one final season.
Yeah, I think there's unfinished business and there's returning to your business, and it's been flooded and also set on fire. So there is a lot to be said. I do think, though, 2024 is the year that the Beaver will rise up from the ashes like the mighty Phoenix, build a hell of a dam in the Missouri River, and camp out in Omaha a little bit, just for a little bit. No, I think they're loaded.
Agreed.
Damn
those Beavers.
Damn those Beavers.
Damn.
I'm going to see those Beavers, I think, in Arizona. I'm excited to see Travis Bazzana down there.
Travis Bazzana.
All right, that's fine. We're halfway home, gents. Let's move on to our sixth storyline, and that is also a matter of movement and change. It's one that we've certainly gotten used to over the last couple of years. It is, of course, the transfer mania. We've already mentioned it a little bit, and our sixth and seventh storylines are kind of two sides of this coin. So let's do the first obvious one. Once again, the portal was absolutely bananas, and we have some of the best players in the country moving all over the place. Now, again, I think it's interesting because we've been so used to saying, oh, okay, well, everyone's going to the SEC. And yes, largely we had a lot of that. But I think when you see a school like Wake Forest bringing in Chase Burns out of the SEC, you see them bring in a top D2 player like Seaver King into the ACC. Obviously you go to D1 baseball's top transfers. I mean, yeah, I think 17 of the top 20 are in the SEC. Okay, that's not an accident. At the same time, we know that there's a big...
What a coincidence!
What I'm most interested in terms of these transfers, and Steve, I'll kick it to you to highlight some of the other ones that interest you, is right now we still have... I am interested in the different kind of flavor of transfer where you have the breakout underclassman who wants to go test himself at the higher level. And then you have just the old guy who's got another year of eligibility and wants to, maximize it. Maybe he's 24. I'm looking at a guy, we should have mentioned earlier, Mac Bingham, who was at Arizona, follows Jay Johnson now a couple of years late, to LSU. That's an old guy that could put up some big numbers in the SEC. So I'm just interested in the different kind of categories of transfer that we have. But Steve, is there any, I mean, again, there's no shortage, but are there any guys that you specifically wanted to shout out in terms of transfers we're looking forward to?
I mean, there's so many of them that, this whole season, all season long, I'm going to essentially just have the top transfer list printed out in my pocket because there's so many. But I mean, you get unlimited talent in the portal this offseason. You get guys like Braden Montgomery, who's like, okay, I need a right fielder, but I also need a pitcher. Okay, we got that. There's literally everything you need in the transfer portal. There's multiple two-way guys, but my favorite kind of transfer will always be the guys who they went to a small school. A lot of people didn't want to take a chance on them. They make a name for themselves, then they transfer to the big school, and then they go and make a name for themselves there too. So
get another name
this season. Honestly, you do get another name, and in this case, I think there's no better guy to shout out than Wahiwa Aloy from Sac State. And the reason I say that, I said his name completely wrong, but that's how everyone was pronouncing his name. I saw a video of Arkansas's head coach. He's standing there in a press conference. He says, throw the W's out, focus on the V sound. It's Wahiwa Aloy. And now he's Wahiwa Aloy at Arkansas. So is that a new name? I don't know, but now I know how to say his name better, which I'm very thankful for. And I think he's going to absolutely tear it up. As a freshman at Sac State,
Steve, you pronounced it wrong.
Wahiwa?
I just watched. Now, again, maybe Dave Van Horn isn't the guy.
I was about to
no. I feel it was a recent video. That's why I trust it, because it's like, okay, just spend a whole fall around me.
I am curious, though. Yeah,
Dave Van Horn says Vaheva.
Yeah.
Vaheva.
Okay. There's
a difference there. You were focusing on the V's, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I was saying the hell out of those V's. I was.
Now, I don't know if Dave Van Horn has been to Hawaii. But I'm going to roll with his pronunciation here. Sorry, Steve. Continue with Wahiwa Aloy.
That's fair. No, I'm very excited to watch him. I think another guy, small school to big school, of course, Seaver King, transferring from Wingate, which is by no means a small school.
It's not Losegate.
No, it's not. And also, some people call it Wingate. Wingate. They kind of skip the A.
We don't practice. We just wing it.
Hey, we're just going to show up, wing it. And it works. It works for him. They won a national championship, and now he's transferred from a D2 to Division I Wake Forest. He's going to be exciting to watch. Cannon Peebles is another guy. He was, I'm sorry, NC State. You had another star freshman get booted to the portal, and not get booted. It's all decisions
they
made,
booted themselves to the portal.
Yeah, the self boot, and that's okay. Sometimes the self boot comes. I experienced the self boot, but I'm serious. There are so many transfers in college baseball. It's going to be really hard to keep up, but you're going to love them.
I got a under the radar one, if I may share.
Please
do.
Omar Melendez.
Oh, this is a great one. I didn't know you knew about Omar Melendez, so I'm excited to hear what you found. I was excited about him when I saw where he transferred. So go ahead.
6'6" Puerto Rican lefty transferring from Alabama State to Maryland.
Yes,
Maryland is a team I'm very interested in. I think we'll talk a little bit more about them on our next pod. But going from Alabama State up to Maryland from Puerto Rico, this could be very interesting. I'm very intrigued.
I'm fascinated by the recruiting there. I'm fascinated by the fact, again, he was like a SWAC, ace. He's really young for the class.
His numbers were insane last year. I mean, his numbers 93 innings with the 2.52, more than a K.
He will be draft eligible as a really young for the class, big left-hander. So yeah, that's a great one. That is, I don't know where. I'm curious where he ranks on the 84 on the top 130 transfers. That's a great one. But I am glad you mentioned that, because Steve, we mentioned Seaver King. Like, that is another category that's obviously means a lot to us as D3 alums, from D2 to D3 junior college. Those guys I love seeing come up and make a really big impact, whether it's grad transfer or even younger. So
now the last one I want to say before we change gears here a little bit. College baseball doesn't have the following dynamic often. Wow, it's weird seeing this guy in a new uniform. In pro sports, Like Reese Hoskins, right? He was in Philly forever. Now he's finally on a different team. It's going to be weird to see him in a Brewers uniform. Peyton Chatagnier being on TCU is a very rare example of, whoa, he was at Ole Miss for 3 decades. He is going to look weird in a new uniform. We don't get that a lot, but now we have that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we have grad transfers, but no, I agree. That's a good one, especially when you're associated with an SEC school for so long. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm right there with you. I just, like, he was Ole Miss baseball for a long time. Ever since the Alcorn State steal every base against the team, he was doing it. But in a world full of transfers, in a world where everything is different, it begs the question, who doesn't have a million transfers? Who's going to stay the same? And who's going to be the best at staying the same?
And this was something that Steve and I talked about a couple of weeks ago. Like, and I feel like I need to do more research into this to kind of find the team that hasn't relied on transfers to an extreme degree, because your first thing. Okay, I mean, I have one very quick answer that's pretty obvious. But before we get to that, like, I do think just as a concept, yes, Steve, like, I'm so interested in this. Like, again, it's not a matter of shaming the teams that are in the portal. I mean, that's just college baseball in 2024. Like, that's fine. I get it. It is what it is. At the same time, I am also intrigued to see which teams have the most guys that showed up together as freshmen, and there's one school that stands out in that regard for obvious reasons. We can get to them. But Steve, yeah, I mean, have you found any other ones besides maybe the obvious one that we're going to mention?
I'm going to say the one that really stands out to me is ECU, just from a culture standpoint. That's a good one. Like, that's a good one. They'll bring in transfers. It's new. Cliff Godwin, he'll do it. He'll bring in transfers. I feel like he won't go out and look for transfers. It's more of he'll stumble upon a guy and be like, you can play for me. And it kind of happens. But I was interested to see that.
I believe, looking at the list on DoItBaseball.com, they are the highest ranked team that did not bring in a transfer in the top 130.
Wow, yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, and again, that's a school that their recruiting has done so well, and they didn't even get Mike Trout to campus. I mean, think about that. They what could have been, but I think that's a great way to put it. The other school that stands out to me in this regard is Stanford, right? I mean, that's something that we noticed when we saw them in Omaha, and that's not surprising, right? You think, okay, well, where is it going to be hard to transfer? Probably Stanford. But I think that is a difference. You look at some other schools like Duke, they've had a lot of transfers now. It's D3 types, it's Ivy League types, but a transfer is a transfer. You're bringing in outside talent. So I think that to see, a school like Stanford is still going to stand. And I'm curious if that's ever going to change. I don't know how that would change. But I am curious about that, because even like Wake Forest, another strong academic school, we know they're going hard in the portal at this point. So that's a great note about ECU, Jake. That's a really good way to put it. So I think that really is our answer there.
Yeah, that was a very quick cross reference, Jake. I got tip.
No, but thanks to you. That's you off the top of your head. It's true. You pull up their starting lineup. It's like, yeah, no, these dudes have been in Greenville the whole time. So respect to them makes it even easier to root for all of them. All right, let's move. Let's go to number 8 here. Speaking of transfers, I guess let's talk about Wake Forest.
Got it.
We could have done them at the top. You wrote here on the doc, Steve, is Wake Forest good at baseball again? Effing probably. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
I think they will be, because we got Jake tippy tapping, so we're going to learn about Wake Forest.
Well, Steve, I mean, listen. It's to me, Wake Forest this year is in the same way with LSU last year. It was just like the talent level is so overwhelming. And this is with them losing, Brett Lauder, right? But like, you just look at it and you're just like, where is the hole? What is the flaw in this team? And it is hard to find when they are the team that could have, 2 top 5 picks or whatever, multiple 3 top 10 picks. And so I think that, but the question is, it's just like, okay, are they now just a powerhouse and unlike anything else? Are they just running away with the ACC, right? The ACC we thought had a lot of competition at the top, but it seems like now they've sort of separated themselves. But yeah, there's a lot about Wake Forest that's interesting. So I think they do deserve to be in our top 10.
Yeah, I think the better question wouldn't be, are they going to be good at baseball again? I think the better question would be, how long are they going to be as good as they are at baseball, because it feels like they really built something that's going to last pretty long down in Winston-Salem. It just feels right. It feels right to me. They do have a lot of transfers, but I feel like Wake is the team that when they get transfers, they really like are intelligent about who they're getting. Like they seem like they moneyball it, where it's like, okay, this guy's
like Woke Forest.
Hey, fine by me. If it means we are maximizing these players' potential, sign me up.
And here's the thing, like I will say they are also going to have more of a LSU situation where, you know, Nick Kurtz, Seaver King, you know, they're two, in theory, you know, best position players, and then their top three starters, Josh Hartle, Chase Burns, Michael Massey. All of those guys are going to be picked in the top 50 picks, top 40. I mean, like that is going to be an absurd. They could set all kinds of crazy draft records. So to your point, like how long? I mean, clearly the infrastructure is there, and I'm sure they'll bring in another, you know, slew of transfers next year. But this is an unbelievable opportunity that is not going to come around very often to have this amount of talent on your team. So in that sense, I feel like there's not that they disappointed in the way that their season ended last year. Of course, we got a classic in Omaha, but like, I mean, you got to do it again. Like it's so funny because last year's like, oh, finally going to Omaha. Like Wake Forest better be in Omaha this year, or we're gonna have some problems here. Like honestly, you know, that's kind of how I view them.
They lost 2 first-round picks in Brock Wilkin and Rhett Lauder, and they're better.
Yeah, and
okay, I think that is just such an impressive accomplishment for this program, which has gotten so much better over the last 3 years. I was fortunate enough to go down there in December for the bridge seminar that they do, and they're on a different level. They really are on a different level. What they've built is beyond impressive. And like maybe this is why I like watching this program succeed, because they are so intentional with how they do things. And I like it when good process rewards good results, which is kind of the opposite of Stephen Schoch's playing career.
Yeah. That took me a little bit to think about the transitive properties of what that sentence meant, but we got there, and I accept it. I'm good with it. But I think another thing that really stands out about Wake Forest is like the players just really want to be there. Like Chase Burns transferred strictly because of the vibes. I mean, the pitching lab was a part of it, but when I think
he was like, my guess would be, Steve, to be honest with you, I'm going to fact check you there. I would guess that part of Chase Burns' decision to transfer, whether he said it or not, was because Wake Forest was more willing to let him start than Tennessee was.
That's fair. That might be it too.
I just think that that's an important piece of the puzzle.
That was part of it.
It was accredited to how much fun he thought the team was having.
Is you're allowed to start? Is that a vibe?
Sure. That feels like a vibe
to me.
And
Such a vibe.
Part of that vibe of pitching at Wake Forest is hanging out with, of course, pitching coach Corey Muscara, who I'm friends with. But
booyah!
Wow, I think the reason it's important.
40,
yeah, that's pretty good. But I think it's important that he comes up, and it's necessary he comes up, because in 2024 in college baseball, there is going to be one staunch difference, and that is going to be the void of Tony Rossi. He's no longer the head coach at Siena. He was the head coach of Siena when Corey Muscara was there. So
when Corey Muscara was born.
Yeah.
Come on. I was like, we can do better than that.
He's been there. He's been there a time or two, but now they got a new coach who's like super young. Who do they got? So you guys know him, right?
Not personally. So Tony Rossi was there for decades and decades. What was the stat that we landed on the moon, and then 8 months later they hired Tony Rossi to be their baseball coach, and then he ended his run last year? Okay, so they brought in a gentleman by the name of Alex Jersinski, who was a Princeton D3 guy who played at Oswego State, Jordan.
Lake Show.
We love that Lake Show. And so Alex Jersinski, based on my brief research, seems like he's in his mid to early 30s. So he would have to coach until he's 125 to catch Tony Rossi. Moving away from Siena, The current leader in the clubhouse, I believe, for the longest tenured manager in one place is John Anderson at Minnesota, who's been there since 1982.
So that is Keith Gutton, I believe, who might have be also leaving after this year, has been at Missouri State since 1983. So we have him, and then we have some other. Of course, this is Gary Gilmore's last year at Coastal Carolina. He's been there since '96. Danny Hall's been at Georgia Tech since 1994. He was coaching for a while before then. So we have some, but none of these guys can sniff Tony Rossi. And so whether it's John Anderson, who we'll see, who's going to make it known that I'm gunning for Tony. I'm going for it. You can't get rid of me because I have a record to set, and that's coaching at one place for 60 years or whatever. So a long way to go. It's a tall task, but I'm curious.
I think the good way for me to wrap my head around this, because I like to make things simple in order to understand them, is Tony Rossi was associated. He started coaching right when the moon landing was happening. John Anderson started
allegedly.
Yeah, of course. Don't want any legal proceedings.
The alleged moon landing. Yeah.
And John Anderson started coaching at Minnesota when allegedly they filmed E.T. So. It's all about space.
The documentary. You mean the documentary E.T.?
Yeah, the biopic about that little worm dude coming down from the stars who's got mad long distance phone minutes. But it's tough. I literally Googled 1982 facts, and that was the first thing that popped up. I was like, what are the odds it's related to space?
Boom. We got you covered, bro.
Sometimes Google just knows.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're just really curious. Again, all the longest ending, it's just very, very difficult for us to wrap our mind around. But anyway, good luck to all those coaches, and we hope they all coach forever.
Yeah, we hope you all coach forever. But on the flip side of the coin, there's going to be some coaches that don't coach forever.
And this is our final topic. Okay. Now, our final storyline. Steve wrote. I'm going to read it verbatim. Okay. Steve wrote for our 10th storyline. And this is in italics also. So it's important here.
Steve dropped the computer when he was typing that.
Verbatim. Quote, with the advances in technology, does the hot seat get hotter faster in 2024? Steve, what are you talking about?
In college baseball, there are many tools to be good now. There are many tools, whether it be training tools, whether it be going and taking other people's good players. There's tools. Should coaches get fired faster for not being good quicker? Because there's tools that are in place to make you good quicker, I think that on Twitter, there's a lot of discourse every year. Whenever a coach does bad, it's immediately, let's fire this coach. Let's get them out of here. And it's immediate. And so I'm wondering, is there more validity to those arguments when there are so many more tools for coaches to have success within these programs?
No, because it's all relative.
Well, I would say when we're talking about those tools, I do think this is interesting, even though you've brought it up in a very strange way, Steve.
Yeah.
And obviously Jake has some good insight on this as a coach. Because the key word here is resources, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you are a program that has resources and are choosing not to use them, I would say you could put that at the foot of the coach and say, what the hell?
Or you are using them poorly.
Or you're using them poorly, right? That is
Georgia.
That is something where that is, I think, what you're bringing up maybe has some validity.
Yeah.
However, damn, St. Peter's and all this school in the MAC and the whatever isn't succeeding because they're not, using their pitch lab isn't being built fast enough. It's like, well, what do you come on.
Just buy some force plates, you idiot.
They're not exactly, rolling in the dough. And so you're not going to blame the coaching staff there. So, but I am curious, Jake, your take on this, because I think there's some validity to what Steve is saying, even though it's a kind of a strange way to bring it up.
Yeah. I think that you have to judge coaches based upon their specific situations, which is kind of what you said. And if a coach is doing a bad job of using the resources they have, or they are ideologically resistant to realities of the modern game, that then necessitates introspection and evaluation, right? So that can be they're resistant to NIL, or they're resistant, and like their school has the money for NIL and they think NIL is stupid. That's bad. If they think the portal is a waste of time and all the other teams in their conference are crushing it and they're losing games, that's bad. But I think saying that like advances in tech, you either need to learn how to use it or get left behind. Yes, I agree with that. But I think that is more of a longer term thing. Like, I don't think that happens on like a year-to-year basis.
Yeah, I think that's a better way of putting it. I do have to apologize because when you got to crushing it and winning games, that's when my brain snapped back on from all the big words you used at the start of your sentence. I gotta say, you went on just an absolute hot streak of SAT prep words, and my brain just like shut off for a second.
That's another thing you and Rudy share, where like Joe Healy says a word and Rudy's like, whoa, watch it.
I was like, wow, dude, Mike Rooney freaking out about the word diaspora was like, you are not Jewish.
So funny.
I don't know how to spell that. What's diaspora?
That's see, we got to teach Steve also. Anyway, to your point, Steve, I think this is again like coaching changes. Like, we have 41 new head coaches, I believe, in D1 baseball this year. And like, clearly there is in certain, because of the conference changes, because certain teams, remember, here's another storyline we didn't include. How about just like a really good program just randomly finishes in last place? This is just a thing that's been happening.
Louisville, Ole Miss.
Dude, Florida State last year, like, oh my God, right? Let alone the Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So like, we're going to have, like, we're going to be positive here on the Schoch Factor. There are going to be some messy situations that we don't necessarily see coming. And I think that it is all kind of tied together in terms of, like Jake saying, you got to keep up somehow, whether that is through technology, whether that is through player development, whether that is through the transfer portal, whether that is through recruiting, whatever. It's all those things are related. So it's interesting. But Steve, we're coming up on an hour. We have another podcast to record. We're doing our other one. I'm very excited for that. We're going to record that in a few minutes. But I think this was a successful first episode back. I'm so glad we're doing this. I should also mention again, this is coming out on Friday. Normally our episodes will be on Monday, again, as they were last year. They'll be coming out a little bit later on Mondays, just due to some scheduling changes. But we're excited to be back with you, Steve. I hope you are having a good time with us, even if you don't necessarily always understand all the words we're saying. But we feel the same way about you. So I think it works well. And I'm so happy to be back. And I'm excited to record another podcast with you in 2.5 minutes. So if you, again, tweeted Big Donkey 47, tweeted us, that's what is BBQ. We're excited for college baseball. We hope you are too. Steve, final thoughts before we say goodbye to this episode.
Final thoughts, as long as you guys are smiling while you say the big words, and I know you aren't upset with me, then we're good.
I don't want Steve to feel PTSD about like he's back in elementary school. And so I'm sorry if we contributed to that at all.
Yeah, no, I wasn't good at that. I did eat a lot of Play-Doh before we recorded, though, so I didn't have that.
That explains everything. All right, we'll talk to you.
All right. On that note, we'll be back.